radio show right here on 860 AM WNOV and W293 CX 106.5. However you may be listening to us, whether through those stations, the Simple Radio app, the TuneIn app, the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener radio tab, or anywhere in between. I am your host, Joy Barrett. Beside me is my wife, co-host, best friend, gardening partner.
Hi, Bear.
Behind the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com is your destination for all things gardening. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, 850 videos, and a whole lot more. We're producing about 9 a week in the garden videos, as well as in-studio videos and highlights of what goes on during the show. So we want to discuss garden practices that work for us. Now, the disclaimer here is we excluded anything that was relevant to a specific size or type of garden, because not everybody, and there's probably nobody in the city of Milwaukee or listening worldwide that has the same garden style, size, dimensions as ours. So we wanted to exclude that. But these are practices that will work really regardless of the type of garden you have. And we've got a number of them here, and these are something that we have done in our garden. This is not a list that we got from some website somewhere. These are ones that work for us.
Right, so one is work the soil but do not till. Now, we're not saying that if you've tilled for the past whatever years, don't do that. It's kind of something that we do and we've chosen to do. We don't till our soil.
And that's for a variety of different scientific reasons. There's a lot of microbial life, a lot of worms, a lot of life in the soil. By tilling it, you are disrupting that. You're taking their house and shaking it all up and distributing in different locations. In addition, we have approximately 30 worms per square foot in our garden. The average, the University Extension of Madison says if you have 9 to 10, you're doing really good. We have about 25 to 30, 35 worms per square foot. That's 1 square foot of soil brought out, examined, and counted the worms. So by tilling, we would be killing a tremendous amount of earthworms that help aerate the soil, help break down organic matter, as well as help fertilize with their droppings, their manure, in the garden. So that's the reason, that's the prime reason why we don't till. And if you don't have the worms, you can get the worms by just adding organic material to your garden, dry grass clippings, shredded leaves, coffee grounds, used coffee grounds. That will bring them in. You don't have to, and you don't want to buy them from the bait shop and dump them in your garden containers or nothing. You don't want to do that because it's going to mess up the ecosystem. So another one is
using trellises. So trellises are anything that gets your vine plants, your vine crops, and even your tomatoes off of the ground. And obviously things like pumpkins and large squash, that isn't going to work, but things like beans, like pole beans, your cucumbers, any sort of thing that can climb that isn't too heavy is a good idea to use a trellis for.
Well, and you can trellis some of these larger crops, the cantaloupe, the watermelon, the pumpkins, but there's a lot of work that goes into it because you've got to have some help with maybe a netting of some sort to hold that heavy weight. Now, true enough, the Native Americans and years and hundreds of years ago, a lot of these squashes were naturally designed to climb up trees because of the vines. That's the way they were. And some places you can still find some of these rare squashes. We've got a friend in Tennessee. He finds these along the side of the road, these squashes that grow up these trees, and he harvests them and saves the seeds and grows them in his garden. So that's another one. And trellising, it doesn't have to be some fancy thing that you buy at the garden center. You can use a trellis of any sort, shape, size. It doesn't have to be eye-appealing. It can be flat-out ugly as long as it gets the job done. We've got several different trellises that we use in our garden.
Right. We've taken old baby cribs, baby gates, the sides of baby cribs, baby gates, or even we found a dog kennel thing.
Yeah, which was questionable.
Right.
But the bottom, the metal...
The spring part.
The spring part that the mattress sets on works really, really well for any type. Now, true enough, it's only about 4.5, 5 foot in height, but that will get some of that elevation that you need, because if you've got let's say you've got a 50 square foot area, by elevating pole beans, by elevating cucumbers can take 20 to 30 square feet if you let them go.
We've even done teepee trellises with wood, with branches, old branches that we didn't need, and so you can get really creative.
Right. And that's a great one to use when it comes to trellising, is use what you have. Preferably if you use a neighbor's fence, make sure there's an agreement there that you're not stealing space off their fence.
So let's talk about bringing birds into the garden. And so this is good if you have things like the tomato hornworm or the cabbage looper.
Or bad bugs.
Any bad bugs. So what we do is we take a tuna can, a cleaned out tuna can, and we just nail it to a post and put some bird seed in there. And that bird seed brings the birds to the garden. They see the bad bugs, the bad insects, caterpillars, whatnot, the bad ones, and they eat them.
Now, people will say, well, my tomatoes are getting holes pecked in them because of the birds. Well, the reason why birds are pecking holes in your tomatoes is simply because the birds are thirsty. They're looking for moisture. Birds will also eat soft fruit like blueberries or blackberries or strawberries. But by giving them the food, that bird seed, you're going to attract them to that particular feeding area rather than having the birds feed on your actual produce. And they're actually controlling and helping that ecosystem in your garden by eating those bad bugs. And you're bringing them in and everybody's happy. Now, if you have the problems with the pecking the holes, introduce a bird bath. It's not going to hurt anything. And then you can also look into how you can modify that bird bath in order to help feed or hydrate the honeybees or the bees that are coming in that are pollinating your garden as well.
Okay, and then we have beer to kill slugs. I know there's many different areas of the city itself where you're going to have a lot of slugs just because of the way the soil is, the way your backyard ecosystem is. And we found this effective. And so you don't want to just put like a can of beer in your garden. That doesn't work. What you want to do is take some sort of container like a cup or an old like yogurt container or whatnot and bury it so that it's at ground level. And then you put the beer in there and then the slugs are attracted to it, so they fall in.
That hop smell is what attracts them.
Yeah, it's the hop.
Now, not all beers work, but if you're going to use beer and you're concerned about using your beer, borrow your neighbor's.
No, if you...
Yeah.
Actually, what worked for us was an IPA because it has more of that hop taste to it. So I think that's what attracted them.
And you will be amazed at how many slugs come and just dive bomb into that. And they get that smell, and they fall into it thinking it's a shallow base to drink it, and they drown. And you can get hundreds and hundreds of slugs very, very quickly. And you can do this multiple places in your garden. But again, now when it rains, you may have to reapply that beer because that may flush out of that cup. So keep that in mind.
Okay, so then we have mulch.
Which we talked about heavily last week. If you want to revisit that conversation, you can find that under the radio tab on the website about mulch.
And then growing carrots in containers. That's a really great idea because the soil is nice and loose. Any root crop likes the loose soil. It has a chance to get deep down in there, and that's why it's nice to grow carrots in containers.
And if you want a basin that is about 12 inches, a container, and make sure you have drainage holes. Whether you have a grow bag and or a container, you can pack a lot of carrots in a very, very small spot in order to get those carrots to grow very deeply into the container. Now, and we've done this, and you'll see this on several of our videos about the container carrot growing. And just because you got carrots doesn't mean they have to be orange. We've got every variety, every color of the rainbow when it comes to carrots in containers. And we've tried this in a variety of different ways. We've tried this in the ground. Didn't work because we had very dense soil. You can loosen the soil up. And if your soil has too much nitrogen in it, that's when you get the forking or the hairy carrots on and the disfigurement of the carrots because there's too much nitrogen in the soil. So you want to keep that in mind. And again, another one is intensive planting. When it comes to planting in a small space, you want to maximize that space you have available in your garden. And just because, and when I talk about intensive planting, I don't mean, what I mean by that is if the recommendations, if the back of the seed packet says every 9 to 12 inches, squeeze them in about 7 inches. And try to get those plants to the canopy to touch each other and just have a hedge of plants. If you're in the Milwaukee or surrounding areas, just tune your radio to 860 AM or FM 106.5. You can also find links on our Facebook pages, The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener and Home Canning. Our website, thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com, click on the radio tab at the top of the page, then click on the Listen Live button, and you'll have immediately access to our live program. Mobile devices work very well also. Go to your app store and download for free the TuneIn app or the Simple Radio app. Then search WNOV 860, save it to your favorites, and you can have access to our radio show live wherever you're at in the world. Our radio program will also have podcast replay under the radio tab several days following the live broadcast. You can find all of these links in the show notes below. Our show airs 9 to 10 a.m. Central Standard Time every Saturday, March through the end of October. And we want to thank our sponsors because without them, this would not be anywhere possible. You can find all of their links under the radio tab on our website at thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.